Walking through a cemetery reminds me of a dream. Not my dream, but a dream of one of my friends. I'm going to call him Walid. Walid grew up in a little Muslim village, and one day a group of Christian young people came into his village, and Walid, like any teenager, was a little bit curious. He was a little suspicious as well. He watched these young people carefully from a distance, and he noticed that some of them were really good at football. He enjoyed playing football, and so pretty soon Walid was actively involved playing football with these young Christian people that had come to his village. He noticed that three of the guys were especially good, and over the next couple of days they became close friends. One of the young men kept asking Walid deep, searching questions about Islam. And one night, as Walid went back to his room, he was thinking, I could assure myself a place in paradise if I could just get that young man to become a Muslim. For the next 3 days, Walid worked diligently on him. He used every argument he had ever heard, and by the end of the third day, the young man said the Shahada and became a Muslim. That night in his room, Walid thought, I should be excited, I should be thrilled, I have just assured myself a place in paradise. But he wasn't. And then the thought came to him, Walid, you've criticized the Bible for years, but you've never read a word of it. So the next day, the last day that the young people were in his village, Walid asked those three young men to write out some verses from the Bible on a piece of paper for him. He didn't know what a difficult assignment that would be. They hadn't grown up learning passages of the Bible like he had learned passages of the Quran. But finally they came up with a couple of them, and Walid put them in his pocket, went back to his room that night and pulled out the first one, and as he looked at it, it said something about Mary being the mother of God. In disgust, Walid crumpled it up and threw it away, and he said, what a perverted book those Christians have. Everybody knows that God didn't have a mother. That text was not really a text from the Bible, it was from their catechism. They didn't know that, and Walid didn't know it. But he pulled out the next one, and as he read it, it said at the top, the Our Father. It was the Lord's Prayer, and at least it was quoting from the Bible, even though it was also from their Quran. Walid read that, and as he read the Lord's Prayer, something passed over him that he had never experienced before. He had lost his father when he was a little boy, and he had longed for a daddy that he could talk to. He had heard all kinds of names for God. In fact, Muslims talk about 99 names of God. He knew them all, but he had never heard anybody talk about God as a father. So that night, when Walid finished his regular Muslim prayers, he looked up, and in his heart, he talked to God like he would have talked to his father if he was still alive. It was powerful. Walid wanted to do it again, so the next day, after all 5 of his Muslim prayers, he talked to God as a father. He did that every day for the next year and a half, even in the mosque. But then he began to feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit nervous. He had learned about talking to God as a father from Christians, and he was afraid if he kept doing that he might become a Christian, and he did not want to be a Christian. Christians were heathens. They ate pork and drank alcohol. They prayed to saints and kissed icons. Walid didn't want to be a Christian, so he tried to stop. That night he said his regular prayers, and he stopped. He didn't talk to God like a father. But something was missing. He couldn't sleep, and so he again did it. And over the next few days, he was wrestling. What should he do? He felt he should stop, but he couldn't. Then one night, Walid had a dream. In his dream, he saw that he had died, and they had laid out his body in the cemetery in the traditional way. Everything was normal. It wasn't a frightening dream. He could see his family gather around like the families always did when there was a death. They dug the grave by hand, and then one uncle came and picked up his body by the head, and one uncle came and picked up his body by the feet, and they started carrying his body toward the grave. Everything seemed normal, until suddenly Walid noticed flames leaping up out of the grave, and he was terrified. No, they don't see it. They're going to drop my body into that burning grave. But then just before they dropped his body into the flames, a voice shouted, "Stop!" And everyone turned to look, and there stood Jesus at the end of the grave. And he said, "Don't put him in there. This one belongs to me." And then Walid woke up, surprised, wondering, what does it mean? What does the prophet Isa, he believed that Jesus was a prophet, what does the prophet Isa mean, "I belong to him"? Well, a few days went by when Walid couldn't think about anything else except what did Jesus mean, "I belong to him"? And then one day he was standing in a bookstore. The bookstores in that part of the world are often little shops with an old man looking over his glasses and stacks of books and magazines from floor to ceiling. If you find what you want, you have to pull it out carefully and hope the whole stack doesn't fall over. And Walid was standing there absent-mindedly staring at the stack of books, wondering, what does the prophet mean, "I belong to him"? And then his eyes focused and he saw 2 Bibles, the first 2 Bibles he had ever seen. Excitedly, he pulled them out of the stack, ran up to the cashier and got ready to pay, but the man with terror on his face grabbed the Bibles, put them under the counter and said, "I can't sell them to you. If I sell them to you, you know what would happen to me? You're a Muslim. These are for tourists." Well, Walid kept coming back every day, begging for those Bibles. And finally, one day, the man agreed. He wrapped up the little one in a trash bag. Walid stuck it in his coat pocket and took it home. And that night on his bed, he read the Gospel of Luke over and over and over again. And he gave his heart to Jesus. Today, Walid is a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, supported by your faithful tithes and mission offerings. He's bringing many people like himself to know about Jesus. If you would like to know more about stories like this, of how God is working in different parts of the world, then I would ask you to go to our AdventistMission.org website, and you will find there many stories and videos that will thrill your heart and challenge you about how you can be involved.